years ago. Anyway, so this is the 45th anniversary of Earth Day. And during that time, it's grown from perhaps 1 million people involved, and that was mostly in New York City and upstate New York back in 1970. And now it's across the whole world. There's like 185 nations involved on an annual basis, and 5,000 different environmental organizations are involved in any particular Earth Day that goes on nowadays, and untold millions of people participate. Anyway, it is the largest secular event held in the world, I might add. So it's bigger than the Super Bowl, believe it or not. But anyway, I was kind of hoping we could do a little music with the Earth Day Anthem by William Wallace. It's written to Ode to Joy from Beethoven, and I was hoping that the musicians and Miss Ogletree here could put together a little performance. You know, I didn't know about it until late, but my bad.
It's okay.
Anyway,
For next year.
Practice for next year.
Okay.
I'm going to just read the words because the words are pretty meaningful, I think, and when you put them together with the music, they're even much, much more meaningful, I think. But joyful, joyful, we adore our earth and all its wonderment. Simple gifts of nature that all join into a paradise. Now we must resolve to protect her, show her our love throughout all time. With our gentle hand and touch, we make our home a newborn world. Now we must resolve to protect her, show her our love throughout all time. With our gentle hand and touch, we make our home a newborn world. And that's become kind of an international. There are actually two anthems, one from a person in the Far East, Mid East, I'm sorry, and then this one. So this one is the only one whose music I could begin to read. So this is the one I heard. Anyway, that being said, we'll adjourn to our first reader, and that's going to be Miss Peggy Smith, who has. Pardon?
Peggy.
Penny Smith.
Whoever.
I grew up with Peggy Smith. She's not here today. But Penny is. So,
Yes. All right.
That's not on, I don't
think.
think.
Good. I'll do this one.
You want to do that one?
I'll
Okay.
do this one.
All right, I have a couple of things I need to tell you first. See this? All it asks for is your name and your phone number, and you have a chance to win a free book. And it's Aldo Leopold's, Aldo Leopold's Stand Almanac
Which
Plus.
you definitely want.
It is
He is
huge.
on the almanac.
It is the new American Library copy of it. You don't have to buy anything. All you have to do is give us your name, your phone number, and put it in the little jar over there, and we will draw for that. If you come in second, you get a nice book designed for an elementary school child on Earth Day, and it really is good. You just have to go find an elementary school child to give it to. And since I have to hold this and flip things, this will be an interesting arrangement. But we're going to. Okay, don't do that. I'll just do it with my right hand, and that will be a real challenge. I did not know I was going to read, so and I don't read well. I usually just tell things. But I'm going to read from Wendell Berry, and if you don't know Wendell Berry, he is a gentleman who farms still with mules, and he does sustainable agriculture. In his spare time, he's written a couple dozen novels and collections of poetry, and is just an absolute hoot to listen to because he has a tendency to speak truth to power. And what I have done is just select a couple of miscellaneous things that come from a variety of writings. I've had the opportunity to hear him speak in person, and he's a delight to hear. So, all of these are quotes, and they're not necessarily connected. Don't own so much clutter that you will be relieved to see your house catch fire. Whether we or our politicians know it or not, nature is party to all our deals and decisions, and she has more votes, a longer memory, and a sterner sense of justice than we do. Not something to take lightly. Do unto those downstream as you would have those upstream do unto you.
Amen.
Rats and roaches live by competition under the laws of supply and demand. It is the privilege of human beings to live under the laws of justice and mercy. Although you wouldn't know that all the time. We have lived our lives by assumption that what was good for us was good for the world. We have been wrong. We must change our lives so that it will be possible to live by the contrary assumption, that what is good for the world will be good for us. And that requires that we make the effort to know the world and learn what is good for it. It may be that when we no longer know which way to go, that we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. The care of the earth is our most ancient and most worthy, and after all, our most pleasing responsibility. To cherish what remains of it and to foster its renewal is our only hope. I have always loved the window, especially an open one. It is easy for me to imagine that the next great division of the world will be between people who wish to live as creatures and people who wish to live as machines. Can we actually suppose that we are wasting, polluting, and making ugly this beautiful land for the sake of patriotism and the love of God? Perhaps some of us would like to think so, but in fact this destruction is taking place because we have allowed ourselves to believe and to live a mated pair of economic lies. That nothing has value that is not assigned to it by the market, and that the economic life of our communities can safely be handed over to the great corporations. And finally, the difference between a path and a road is not only the obvious one. A path is little more than a habit that comes with knowledge of a place. It is a sort of ritual of familiarity. As its form, it is a form of contact with the known landscape. It is not destructive. It is the perfect adaptation for experience and familiarity of movement to place. It obeys the natural contours. Such obstacles as it meets, it goes around. And above all else, Wendell Berry is an author of place. Next.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you very much, Penny. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to kind of rearrange the furniture a little bit. Merrill is known for rearranging the furniture.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I don't need electricity powered by mountaintop removal coal to talk to you guys on Earth Day. But just in case, I want to get subtle.
Sound like going.
Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Bigelow, and I am a horticulturalist by trade, an environmentalist by vocation, an activist by obligation, and an organic gardener, and a bit of an egoist. So I'm going to read you 3 works today. 2 by me, Adam Bigelow, and 1 by the wonderful and great Mr. Wendell Berry. Probably not one that will be read at any other Earth Day event across this country. And if somebody else reads this one at an Earth Day event, I will applaud them for their wit and their craziness. But first, I'm going to start you off with something sad, because, I mean, it's Earth Day.
Right.
It's what, the 40th anniversary or something?
45th.
45 years. I got introduced to environmental activism in high school by a teacher. Thank you, teacher.
Very good.
45 years. Too bad we still have to have this to say, hey, everybody, don't do bad things. Anyway, here we go. This poem is called Tsuga, which is the Latin name for the hemlock. The ghost trees haunt the trailside. Soon they will be falling. A stark contrast to the green of the mountains they stand. Some still flush green tips, you know, the edible part. But most have turned gray, the color of gravestones, as if marking their own demise. The ghost trees haunt the creek side, standing like smokestacks burning through the night. Climate change to the trout, the crawdad, the caddisfly, hellbender, who depend on coolness to thrive. Soon they will be falling one by one. The ghost trees haunt the lakeshore. Soon they will be falling, creaking like masts in the wind. This haunted pirate ship droops with moss and death as it awaits gravity and death. Soon they will be falling. There'll be no stump sprouts to mark their place, no young leaves to say, hey, there one stood before invasion took them away, like the mighty that have fallen before. Soon the ghost trees will be fallen and rotted away, with nothing left to remind us. Once the trees have gone, and there remain none for the invader to feast upon, the seedbed can burst forth with life. And Suga will rise again to the canopy. Until then, it remains for us to remember. I printed these with, petroleum-based ink on a piece of paper that's bleached white with mica, and I also was printed with electricity powered by mountaintop removal coal mining. This one was written on a piece with a Sharpie. Now, here is the dilemma of being an environmentalist. Which is worse? I'm sorry, I have no idea. I can't answer that without a detailed environmental assessment of both of them. This one's a little happier. Took place right up there, top of the world. It's called the Dance of Balsam Crows. Once on my back atop Black Rock, with a treetop periphery, blue sky above, two crows, oblivious or indifferent to me, danced and played on top of the world. In their flips, somersaults, dips, tricks, and dives, awe held my breath. Red spruce's tender tips snatched from midair, only to be flown up, dropped, and caught over and over and over again. No sounds save wind and breath. Cool rock on my back with only time to watch the crows dance. Thank you. All right. Enough of this egocentric poetry. I'm going to read a poem by Wendell Berry. And there's no young children. Oh, now there's young children. Thank you, Mr. McMahon, for showing up right on time. It says racy. It's springtime. What's not racy? Look at the flowers and hillsides and birds and bees and all that. This is from a great collection of poems called Farming, a Handbook. The mad farmer, the thirsty one, went dry. When he had time, he threw a visionary high lonesome on the Holy Communion wine. It is an awesome event when an earthen man has drunk his fill of the blood of a god, people said, and got out of his way. He plowed the churchyard, the minister's wife, 3 graveyards, and a golf course. In a parking lot, he planted a forest of little pines. He sanctified the groves, dancing at night in the oak shades with goddesses. He let a field of corn to creep up and tassel like an Indian tribe on the courthouse lawn. Pumpkins ran out to the end of their vines to follow him. Ripe plums and peaches reached into his pockets. Flowers sprang up in his tracks everywhere he stepped. And then his planter's eye fell on that parson's fair fine lady again. "Oh, holy plowman," cried she, "I am all grown up in weeds. Pray, bring me back into good tilth." He tilled her carefully and laid her by, and she did bring forth others of her kind, and others, and some more. They sowed and reaped, till all the countryside was filled with farmers and their brides sowing and reaping. When they died, they became 2 spirits of the woods. On their graves were written these words without sound: "Here lies Saint Plowman." Here lies Saint Fertile Ground. Thank you. I left the compost pile over here, and now I get to go to the garden over there, and I'm so blessed. It's springtime. There are gardens. There are wildflowers. There are happy people smiling at you. Smile back. Go look at flowers. Get outside. Till the earth. Put your fingers in the soil. Thank you.
Want me to just go up there?
Come on up, Sarah. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, and it'll be a little quicker, I think.
Okay. I used my phone to write all my stuff on. I don't know if that's better either. I had to charge it, so there you go. It's hard to be aware. But thank you, Adam. That was wonderful, wherever you are as he leaves. If you don't know Adam, make yourself aware of him and all the good things that he does in this community. He's a wonderful guy, and he does a lot of good. Happy Earth Day. Thanks for coming. I'm really glad to see everyone here, and it's exceptionally encouraging in a fight that can often be very discouraging. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Ogletree, and I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here on a truly beautiful day, which I think really speaks to what we're trying to do. As a graduate of Appalachian State's Sustainable Development Program, care for the earth is very important to me. If we do not have clean water and air, then we do not have nutritious food or drink, and ultimately the beauty around us is destroyed. We as humans are inherently connected to this planet, and it is time that we begin to act like that is the truth. In order to do this work, I hope to attend divinity school, in which I can help to reestablish our relationship and reliance on creation. I also teach several classes on creation care and justice at Cullowhee United Methodist Church, and I would love for all of you to join us. One of those classes is going to begin this summer, and we're going to spend a lot of time in the garden and hopefully with Adam. So if you would like to do that, let me know. Please also help our community by spending time in the community garden, being a conscientious shopper, and becoming more aware of your surroundings and their value. We have so much to be thankful for and so much to preserve. And it is on this note that I offer you the following poem by E. E. Cummings. It was very hard to pick a poem, so I'm very glad that Wendell Berry was heavily covered because he was one of my top. All right. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees and a blue true dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. I who have died am alive again today, and this is the sun's birthday. This is the birthday of life and of love and wings, and of the gay, great happening, illimitably earth. How should tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, breathing, any lifted from the no, of all nothing, human, merely being, doubt unimaginable you? Now the ears of my ears awake, now the eyes of my eyes are opened. Go and do good things and be kind to each other today and always. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Louise, is Frank here? Where'd Louise go? I saw him right there. He's not here. Sir, would you like to fill in for Frank Pearl?
Yeah, well.
We do it, right? We have cake. Remember the cake?
No, Louise is on the, she's on the,
Okay, I thought you kept saying Louise.
yeah, go ahead and fill in for Frank. And
Okay.
what's your name again, sir?
Harold Sims.
Okay, Mr. Sims, go ahead and introduce yourself if you would, please.
Probably all know who I am. I'm Harold Sims. I'm known as the Cat Man around town here. Used to be a teacher at St. Pete Junior College in Clearwater, Florida. And I celebrated the first Earth Day back in 1970, believe it or not. I'm 80 years old now, so I was alive back then. Maybe you weren't alive back in those days, but anyway, I was teaching at the college for about 2 years at the time. We heard about the Earth Day coming up, so I decided to have an Earth Day celebration, which was opposed by the local city council. They were afraid it's going to be riots, and all kinds of things. So I brought in a whole slew of people. I got Nat Reed, who was Secretary of the Interior for Nixon at the time, a Republican, but a very left side. You may get sides here, which is left and which is right, but very much on the environmental side. Lived in Hope Sound, very much involved with the environment. He came across the state in a private airplane and spoke to us. I invited Pete Seeger to come down, but he couldn't come, so we sent a troubadour from Florida named William McLean, who was the Florida troubadour at the time, and he sang music all day on the campus. And I just came looking at my book. I wrote a book in 1970 because I couldn't find a good book on ecology that could be understood by college freshmen at the time. Most books on ecology back in those days were all based on models, and on mathematical models and things like that, so not very exciting to read about. So I decided to write my own book, which I published in 1970 to begin with, and then published 4 more copies after that, the last one being 1989. I retired from the college in 1991, came up here, spent a few years enjoying myself, then found a need for cat rescue and opened up a shelter up in Glenville above here, and then came down to Cullowhee in 2000, built a 4,000 square foot building, which is the largest cat shelter in Western Carolina. We have about 80 cats in stock right now. What amazed me, though, looking at the book, was population. And I went through a few things on the computer, and what I can remember myself was in this book. And I think that's our biggest problem, is population growth everywhere, not only here but over the world. And figures I got out of my book and also off the internet. It took 600,000 years to reach 1 billion people living on the earth. 600,000 years, 1 billion people were living on this earth. That was 1850 when that happened. 1930, it doubled. It was up to 80. It doubled to 2 billion in 80 years. In 1960, it went up again another billion in 30 years. 75, it went up another billion to 4 billion. And it's a little bit slower now. It's only gone up another billion in the last 11 years. So it's probably due to better health care, and more people used to die from childbirth and die from diseases now are living to be older. And I myself retired in 1991. I'm living on a retirement from the state of Florida for almost as long as I worked for the state of Florida. And I'm really worried about the fact that how we're going to support people who aren't saving any money today. I mean, I have any retirement when they get to be my age. We did without to put money away and save it, but people I work with today and know about today aren't putting that much money away, can't afford to. I heard on something on the TV this morning that the average income most people was under $30,000 a year in this country, and they have no money to put away to save for the future. And when they turn my age, what are they going to do? And they think I might live to be 100 maybe if I'm lucky. I need to keep all of the cats happy. But anyway, I just wanted to say that this book also, if I had more time to show you, I talked in this book about things like energy, whole chapter here on energy. This was a very crude book. I drew pictures in the book with pencil and pen and had them reproduced. We have this book was published in 90. The latest one was printed, I believe it was 19, let me get the date here for you, quite a few years ago, many years ago. It was 1989 was the last edition. And we have in here solar greenhouses, simple solar heaters. We go through active solar, passive solar, a solar house, solar on the roof, methane generation like we do here in our energy park, which is being done a little bit here and there. Using geothermal groundwater to heat and cool your house all year long. This is years ago. Windmills, all things were being talked about, being mentioned at the time, but little bits being done today, but not enough. We're still depending on fossil fuel and coal for most of our energy, and really we are killing the planet. Most amphibians today are gone. I've not seen a red salamander in the woods now for the past probably 15 years. I hike a lot. Used to see them all the time everywhere I went to be pulling out the leaves someplace, but those are pretty extinct by now. So we're killing the world. We got to somehow stop it. Look at the crowd here. I mean, the whole city's around, and a few of us have come to say our piece, and give our support, but it's going to take more than a few of us to do it. How do we do it? I don't know. Anyway, have a good day.
our next speaker will be Jean Ellen Forrester. I'm sorry, Jean Ellen, and then well, Adam's already been here, so Miss Burrell, Louise Burrell will be next after Jean Ellen. Thank you.
What?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about getting ready for this, I kept finding myself going back and back to things, looking at the spiritual dimension of the natural world. And of course, as Adam referred to, the Greek gods were everywhere in every bush and stream and tree. And then the transcendentalists, my favorites, had the oversoul. And so I was thinking about that, and I brought 3 poems today that I think have a connection. I think what they're about is the spiritual world in nature. And the first one is by Gerard Manley Hopkins. This is from a Catholic perspective. And he had sort of a hard time with that because he couldn't figure out how he could be a strict Catholic and love nature so much, but I think he figured it out. This is sonnet. The first part of it talks about the problems in the world that he saw. This was published in 1918, so when he looked around at himself in England, he certainly saw that. And then the second part is the sort of answer to the desolation that he saw. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares men's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things, and though the last lights off the black west went, oh, morning at the brown brink eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and bright wings. And the next two are by Mary Oliver. When I found the book, I saw that I got it when she came here in 1991 to do a reading at Western. It was really quite wonderful. I don't know if any of the rest of you heard that. This first one is about a bear. I thought that was appropriate for the mountains, and especially for Barbara Bell, who has just had her own bear encounter recently. Let me get this paper kind of organized. Somewhere a black bear has just risen from sleep and is staring down the mountain. All night in the brisk and shallow restlessness of early spring, I think of her. Her 4 black fists flicking the gravel, her tongue like a red fire touching the grass, the cold water. There is only one question: how to love this world. I think of her rising like a black and leafy ledge to sharpen her claws against the silence of the trees. Whatever else my life is, with its poem and its music and its glass cities, it is also this dazzling darkness coming down the mountain, breathing, tasting. All day I think of her white teeth, her wordlessness, her perfect love. And then the last one, it's questions at the beginning, and then there's a grasshopper in the middle, and then there's questions at the end. It's called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one and wild and precious life?
All right. Next up will be Louise Burrell. And she'll be followed by Jane Perlmutter. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Go right up to it if you would, please.
Okay, because I talk soft.
Yes, you do.
Anyway, it's actually from a classroom, and it was the Indian way, learning to communicate with Mother Earth, and it's by Gary McLean. And it has wonderful things in it, but I especially like this one. As the years passed by and I became a man, I realized the wisdom of my grandfather's words. Words have great power. They carry the knowledge of our ancestors to our children. As I look at the world now, I know what he meant by his stories. In our world now, I see the pollution in the air, rivers poisoned with chemical waste, animals, trees, and plants dying from acid rain, and oceans thick with our garbage and oil spills. All these things and much more happen out of our disrespect for our Mother Earth and out of our disrespect for each other. Greed has blinded us so we no longer see with our hearts. We no longer hear the animals and plants talking to us. Our world is filled with the sounds of machines. We do not take time to communicate with nature. You can change the conditions that caused our Mother Earth to become ill. We do not have to go back and live the old ways. We only need to use all those ways of life that did not harm the earth. We can use all these good things that our technology provides and all those good ways of the past together. If all the people of our Mother Earth made this their goal, the earth's wounds would heal and she would provide a good, safe home for us. Think of the whole earth as our home, not just a little part of it. When something happens that hurts the environment anywhere on our Mother Earth, it hurts us and our immediate environment also. Sing the songs of our Mother Earth, and she will be young again.
Brief announcement. Just one moment, please.
We just wanted to invite you to share our Earth Day birthday cake that was made by my friend Elise Baca. And we have plenty to go around. We also have cookies, thanks to Jane Perlmutter. There's water in cups. We are trying to be ecologically conscious today. We have a bag over here. The cups can be recycled. The forks can be recycled as well. So they could both go in the bin over here. And please join us in refreshments.
I'm going to read, mostly like to read to little kids. So you all will have to pretend either to be maybe 4, 5, even 6 when you listen to this book. This is a book that I believe has been sent to the high schools here. Not the high schools, obviously, but for younger children, the elementary kids. And this is written by Todd Parr and illustrated by Todd Parr. When you talk about books, you have to tell people those kinds of things. And it's called The Earth Book. And in my experience, little kids like this because the colors are so bright. He says, or she says, I take care of the earth because I know I can do little things every day to make a big difference. I think this is important for, I'm not doing this right. I'll have to, yeah, sure. Okay, well, you can hold it sort of sideways so people can see. Okay, all right. Okay, it's tricky. Okay, I think it's important to start young children early thinking about taking care of the earth and taking care of things. And these are the things that these children can do. I can use both sides of the paper. Okay, and bring my own bags to market because, whoops.
It's been some years.
Yeah, I love the trees. And I want the owls to have a place to live. How about I turn them? Okay, hold it.
Down just a little instead of up. Yeah, there.
Okay, all right.
A lot of instruction.
I turn off the faucet when I brush my teeth. Some of these things I do and some I forget to do, like the bringing the bags to the market, which are in the car. And I use less water for my baths because I love the fish. And I want the oceans to stay blue. And the people too. The yellow people and purple people are very nice. I take the school bus and ride my bike because I'm not sure that microphone's going to.
You have to go a little closer.
I have to go closer.
It's working. You're fine.
Okay, I'm fine already? Okay. I love the stars and I want the air to be clear so I can see them sparkle. And that's a good thing to be in the mountains for that, right? I try to eat every bite on my plate. Actually, I'm not doing that anymore. And save my leftovers. We do that. Because I love watching things grow. And I want there to be enough food for everyone. I remember to turn off the lights and shut the refrigerator to save energy. No sightseeing in the refrigerator. I love the polar bears. And I want the snowman to stay cool. Now, Dan and I weren't quite sure about this, how that connected, but in any case. I throw garbage in the garbage can and recycle glass, aluminum, paper, and plastic because I want to walk barefoot in the grass. And I don't want to move to Mars. Maybe. Most of all, I help take care of the earth because I want us all to be happy and healthy. Okay? Every one of us can help protect the earth and make it feel good. Remember, if we take care of it, it will take care of us. Love, Todd. And actually, if this were your book, you could turn this upside down and have a whole thing of things you could do. Turn off the lights, recycle, save my leftovers, be nice to the worms. It doesn't cover that in the book, but it's important, I guess. Share a book, plant a tree, use both sides of the paper, save water, clean up trash, and put my underwear in the freezer when it's hot. The end, as we say.
Thank you, Jane. Next up will be Diana Kirk, please. Followed by Julia Buckner and then Jennifer Monsinger, please.
I took someone else's place, that's why.
Oh, okay.
She didn't feel like she could
Doris
do
Ray,
her,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. I have two favorite poets from this area. One of them is our very own Thomas Rain Crow, and some of you may have heard this poem already. It's called Beethoven's Bird. The first thought, the inner lake of open roses, so la ti do, or a symphony shaped and sculpted from what we find like magic in the dirt, calling it ours, claiming copyright, like deeds to an earth that no one owns. Why, even on a good day, Beethoven must have stolen his song from birds. And that's one of my favorites because I don't think any of us own the earth. We belong to the earth and should share it all equally. That would be a great day. I look forward to it. Or maybe my grandchildren, if I have any. And this next one is my son Forrest Tapley's poem that he wrote in high school. He had been in creative writing class with Dawn Gilchrist Young. Some of you may know her. She was a wonderful teacher. She inspired him greatly to become a good writer. He works over in Asheville at Greenworks, Asheville, and has been a 2-year participant in the AmeriCorps program with different organizations. One out in Washington that was also environmentally oriented, and now Greenworks. So I encourage anyone who knows young people to advise them to check into AmeriCorps. You can do service just like Peace Corps with great organizations, and you get money towards college, $5,000 per year. He wrote this, I think when he was probably 16, 17. It's called The 88th Percent. Vast oceans and endless expanses of nobodies, the faceless ones and unknown people of the world. Halls echo their lives, the laughter and the tears. Sundry emotions and words dancing like lightning about clouds hurled so short come and fleeting these bright flashes are. And the rest of us, the trees and life of the story, and the best of us growing tall and green, and I, the joyous golden squirrel, bounding through the treetops and living life upon branches never bare. And when all of us in wistful ways hope that life won't be the end of this story, we know my sky is never gray.
Thank you. Thomas Crow sends his regrets. He had a little gallbladder issue and won't be here today. But thank you, Mr. Kirk, for bringing one of his poems very much. Okay, next up will be Julie Buckner. Julie's from Western North Carolina versus here in Middle Country.
I'm from the far west, from Hayesville. Thank you guys so much for having Earth Day celebrations. And I also want to say, Jennifer Motzinger, that cake is delicious. So who made that again?
Her name is Elise Baca.
Baca? So go buy a cake from Baca. Did you get that on film? That was delicious. Okay. I wanted to read a poem today from Wendell Berry from his book, A Timbered Choir. And I wanted to also say that it was so nice to see Miss Perlmutter and Miss Louise stand up, because it reminded me of being in school as a kid and having somebody try to read the book. Roy, you did a good job. Yeah, that's great. I grew up on a farm, but to different people that means different things. Some people that meant maybe they had to do some chores and they had to bring in firewood, but to us it meant that we actually killed the hog that we were going to eat, and then I did documentaries for school to prove to people that that actually did happen, and we grew our own beef cattle as well. So this is an interesting piece about the farm, and what I always remember from my grandparents is, as a kid, I couldn't understand how they knew what to do when to do it. How do you know when to plow the field or when to plant the seed, or how do you know when things are going to come up? And they just sort of knew that. And Wendell Berry lays out how to do it. So if you don't know how to have a farm, read the book. It tells you. Here you go. Go by the narrow road along the creek, a burrow under shadowy trees such as a mouse makes through tall grass, so that you may forget the wide road you have left behind and all that it has led to. Or best, walk up through the woods, around the valley rim, and down to where the trees give way to cleared hillside, so that you reach the place out of the trees' remembrance of their kind, seasonal and timeless, they stand in uncounted time, and you have passed among them, small as a mouse at a feast, unnoticed at the feet of all those mighty guests. Come on a clear June morning to the farm, as the fog lifts, trees drip, and birds make everywhere uninterrupted song. However you may come, you'll see it suddenly, lying open to the light amid the woods, a farm. Little enough to see or call across. There's a cornfield, hayfield, and pasture, clear as if remembered, dreamed, and yearned for long ago, neat as a blossom now, when all its fields are mowed and dew is fresh upon it, bird music all around. That is the vision, seen as if on a Sabbath walk, the possibility of human life whose terms are heavens and this earth. Stay years if you would know the work and the thought, the pleasure and grief, the feat by which this vision lives. In fall or winter, you should plow a patch of bottom land for corn. The freezes then will work the heavy clods. When it's too wet to plow, go to the woods to fell trees for next winter's fuel. Take the inferior trees, and not all from one place, so that the woods will yield without diminishment. Then trim and rick the logs, and when you drag them out from woods to rick, use horses, whose hooves are kinder to the ground than wheels. In spring, the traces of your work will be invisible. Near winter's end, your flock will bear their lambs, and you must be alert, out late and early at the barn, to guard against the grief you cannot help but feel when any young thing made for life falters at birth and dies. Now save the best hay to feed the suckling ewes, shelter them in the barn until the grass is strong, then turn them out to graze. The green hillsides, good pasture, keep shade and water close. Then watch for dogs, whose sport will be to kill your sheep and ruin all your work. Or old coyote may come and be your supper guest, unasked and without thanks. He'll just take a lamb and dine before you know it. But don't, because of that, make war against the world and its wild appetites. A guard dog or a donkey would be the proper answer, for you must learn to live with neighbors never chosen, just as with the ones you chose. Coyote's song at midnight says something for the world the world once said. And when you know your flock is safe, and you'd like to wake and hear that wild voice singing itself free in the dark at home. In early May, prepare the corn ground. In early May, prepare the corn ground and plant the corn. And now you are committed. Wait for the seed to sprout, the green shoots tightly rolled to show from the ground as risen from the grave. And then you must cultivate to keep them free of weeds until they have grown tall and can defend themselves. Where you grew corn last year, sow buckwheat, let it seed, then disc it in and grow a second crop to disc in. This is for hummus and to keep out the weeds. It's a Sabbath for the land, rest and enrichment, good for it, for you, for all. The ones who are unborn. The land must have its Sabbath, or take it when we starve. The ground is mellow now, porous, rich. Mid-August is the time to sow this field in clover, and grass to cut for hay. 2 years, pasture a while, and then return to corn.
Thank you. Here she comes. Jennifer Motsinger.
I wanted to share with you today 3 short Native American stories that talk about the creatures of the earth and the weather, and they come from very different places in our country. The first one is entitled Butterflies, and it's from the Tohono O'odham Nation who live in the Sonora Desert of southern Arizona. One day, the Creator was sitting, watching some children play in a village. The children laughed and sang, yet as he watched them, the Creator's heart was sad. He was thinking, these children will grow old. Their skin will become wrinkled. Their hair will turn gray. Their teeth will fall out. The young hunter's arm will fail. These lovely young girls will grow ugly and fat. The playful puppies will become blind, mangy dogs. And those wonderful flowers, yellow and blue, red and purple, will fade. The leaves from the trees will fall and dry up. Already they are turning yellow. Thus the Creator grew sadder and sadder. It was in the fall, and the thought of the coming winter with its cold and lack of game and green things made his heart heavy. Yet it was still warm and the sun was shining. The Creator watched the play of sunlight and shadow on the ground, the yellow leaves being carried here and there by the wind. He saw the blueness of the sky, the whiteness of some cornmeal ground by some women. Suddenly he smiled. All those colors, they ought to be preserved. I'll make something to gladden my heart, something for those children to look at and enjoy. The Creator took out his bag and started gathering things. A spot of sunlight, a handful of blue from the sky, the whiteness of the cornmeal, the shadow of playing children, the blackness of a beautiful girl's hair, the yellow of the falling leaves, the green of the pine needles, the red, purple, and orange of the flowers around him. All these things he put into his bag, and as an afterthought, he put the songs of birds in too. Then he walked over to the grassy spot where the children were playing. Children, little children, this is for you, and he gave them his bag. Open it, there is something nice inside, he told them. The children opened the bag, and at once hundreds and hundreds of colored butterflies flew out, dancing around the children's heads, settling on their hair, fluttering up to sip from this or that flower, and the children, enchanted, said that they had never seen anything so beautiful. The butterflies began to sing, and the children listened, smiling. But then a songbird came flying, settling on the Creator's shoulder, scolding him, saying, "It is not right to give our songs to these pretty new things. You told us that when you made us that every bird would have its own song, and now you have passed them all around. Isn't it enough that you gave your new playthings the colors of the rainbow?" "You're right," said the Creator. "I made one song for each bird, and I shouldn't take that what belongs to you." So the Creator took the songs away from the butterflies, and that's why they are silent. They are beautiful even so, he said. This one is actually about the weather. And it comes from the Acoma tribe, and they are a Native American Pueblo nation west of Albuquerque. The oldest tradition of the people of Acoma and Laguna indicates that they lived on some island, that their homes were destroyed by tidal waves, earthquakes, and red-hot stones from the sky. They fled and landed on a low, swampy coast. From here they migrated to the northwest, and wherever they made a long stay, they built a white city, Cushcutret. The fifth white city was built somewhere in southern Colorado or northern New Mexico. The people were obligated to leave it on account of cold, drought, and famine. The first governor of Acoma had a daughter named Cochininako. She was the wife of Shakok, the spirit of winter. After he came to live with them, the seasons grew colder, the snow and ice stayed longer, the corn would no longer mature, and the people were compelled to live on cactus leaves, imashchu, and other wild plants. One day, Cochininako went out to gather cactus leaves and burn off the thorns so that she could take them home for food. She had a leaf singed and was eating it, when upon looking up she saw a young man coming towards her. He had on a yellow shirt woven of corn silk, a belt and tall pointed hat, green leggings made of green moss which grows in the springs and ponds, and moccasins beautifully embroidered with flowers and butterflies. In his hand he carried an ear of green corn. He came up and saluted her. She replied. Then he asked her what she was eating. She told him that the people were almost starved, that no corn would grow, and that they were all compelled to live on cactus leaves. "Here," he said, "take this ear of corn and eat it, and I will go and bring you an armful to take home with you." He started and was soon out of sight, going towards the south. In a very short time, however, he returned, bringing a large bundle of green corn, canuch, which he laid at her feet. Cochin Nenako asked him where he had found the corn and if it grew nearby. He replied that he had brought it from his home far to the south, where the corn grows and the flowers bloom all the year. "Oh, how I would like to see your country. Will you not take me with you to your home?" she said. "Your husband, Shakok, the spirit of winter, would be angry if I should take you away," he said. She said, "He is cold ever since he came home. He is cold. Ever since he came here, no corn will grow, no flowers will bloom, and the people are compelled to live on prickly pear leaves." "Well," he said, "take the bundle of corn home with you, and do not throw any of the husks outside the door. Then come tomorrow, and I will bring you more. I will meet you here." Then, bidding her farewell, he left again for his home in the south. Cochin Nenako took the bundle of corn he had given her and started to go home to the town. She had not gone far when she met her sisters, for becoming alarmed at her long stay, they had come out to look for her. They were very much surprised on seeing her with an armful of green corn instead of cactus leaves. Cochin Nenako told them how the young man had come to her and brought her the corn, so they helped her carry it home. When they arrived, their father and mother were wonderfully surprised, but pleased to see them bringing big ears of green corn instead of cactus leaves. They asked Cochin Nenako where she found it, and she told them, as she had already told her sisters, that a young man whom she minutely described had brought her the corn, and had asked her to meet him at the same place on the following day, and that he would accompany her home. "It is Miochin," said her father. "It is Miochin." "It is surely Miochin," said her mother. "Bring him home with you by all means." The next day, Cochin Nenako went to the place she had met Miochin, for he really was Miochin, the spirit of summer. He was already there waiting for her. He had big bundles of corn. Between them, they carried it to the town, and there was enough to feed all the people of Acoma, and Miochin was welcome to the house of the governor. In the evening, as was his custom, Shakok, the spirit of winter and husband of Cochin Nenako, returned from the north, where he spent the days playing with the north wind, and with the snow and the sleet and the hail. He came in a blinding storm of snow, sleet, and hail. On reaching the town, he knew that Miochin was there, and called out to him, "Ha, Miochin, are you here?" Miochin advanced to meet him. "Ha, Miochin, now I will destroy you." "Ha, Shakok, I will destroy you," answered Miochin. Shakok stopped, and as Miochin advanced toward him, the snow and hail melted, and the fierce wind turned into a summer breeze. Shakok was covered with frost, icicles hung all about him, but as Miochin advanced toward him, the frost melted, the icicles dropped off, and his clothing was revealed. It was made of dried, bleached rushes, sharuka. Shakok said, "I will not fight you now, but will meet you here 4 days from now, and fight you till one or the other is beaten." With that, Shakok left in a rage. The wind roared again and shook the very walls, but the people were warm in their houses. Miochin was there. The next day, he left for his home in the south. Arriving there, he made preparations for the meeting with Shakok. He first sent an eagle to his friend Yachum Maimut, who lived in the west, asking him to help him with his fight with Shakok. Then he called all the birds, insects, and four-legged animals that live in summer lands. All of these he called to help him. The bat, Pikleke, was his advanced guard and his shield, as the tough skin of the bat could best withstand the sleet and hail that Shakok would throw at him. On the third day, Yumchapme kindled his fires and heated the thin flat stones that he was named after. Then the big black clouds of smoke rolled up from the south and covered the sky. When Shakok left he went to the north and called to him all the bird and the four-legged animals of the winter lands. He called these all to come and help him in the coming battle. The magpie, Shoaka, was his shield and advance guard. On the morning of the fourth day, the two enemies could be seen coming. In the north, the black storm clouds of winter with snow, sleet, and hail were bringing Shakok to the battle. In the south, Yachme piled more wood on his fires, and great puffs of steam and smoke arose and formed into clouds. They were coming fast towards Acoma, and the place where the fight was to take place, and were bringing Miochin, the spirit of summer. The thick smoke of Yachimme's fires blackened all the animals Miochin had with him, and that is why the animals of the south are black and brown. Forked blazes of lightning shot out of the clouds that were bringing Miochin. Each came fast, Shakok from the north, Miochin from the south. At last they reached the town, and the flashes from the clouds singed the feathers and hairs on the birds and animals that came with Shakok, turning them white. That is the reason why all the animals and birds that live in the north are white, or have some white about them. Shakok and Miochin were now close together. From the north, Shakok threw snowflakes, sleet, and hail that hissed through the air, a blinding storm. In the south, the big black clouds rolled along, and Yachimme's fires still rose up great puffs of smoke and steam that heated the air and melted Shakok's snow and sleet and hail, and compelled him to fall back. At last, Shakok called for a truce. Miochin agreed, and the wind stopped, and the snow and the rain ceased falling. They met at the wall of Acoma, and Shakok said, "I am defeated. You are the winner." Then they agreed that Shakok would rule during half the year, and Miochin during the other half, and that neither should trouble the other thereafter. Ever since then, one half of the year has been cold, and the other half warm. And finally, from the Cherokee, Grandmother Spider steals the sun. In the beginning, there was only blackness and nobody could see anything. People kept bumping into each other and groping blindly. They said, "What this world needs is light." Fox said he knew some people on the other side of the world who had plenty of light, but they were too greedy to share it with the others. Possum said he would be glad to steal it. "I have a bushy tail," he said. "I can hide the light inside all that fur." Then he set out for the other side of the world. There he found the sun hanging in a tree and lighting everything up. He sneaked over to the sun, picked out a tiny piece of light, and stuffed it into his tail. But the light was hot and burned all the fur off. The people discovered his theft and took back the light, and ever since, Possum's tail has been bald. "Let me try," said Buzzard. "I know better than to hide a piece of stolen light in my tail. I'll put it on my head." He flew to the other side of the world and, diving straight into the sun, seized it with his claws. He put it on his head, but it burned his feathers off. The people grabbed the sun away from him, and ever since then, Buzzard's head has remained bald. Grandmother Spider said, "Let me try." First, she made a thick-walled pot out of clay. Next, she spun a web reaching all the way to the other side of the world. She was so small that none of the people there noticed her coming. Quickly, Grandmother Spider snatched up the sun, put it in a bowl of clay, and scrambled back home along one of the strands of her web. Now her side of the world had light, and everyone rejoiced. Spider-Woman brought not only the sun to the Cherokee, but fire with it, and besides that, she taught the Cherokee people the art of pottery making.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next up, we'll have Miss Valerie Harrison, followed by Dan Perlmutter and Avram Friedman. Thanks.
Hello, fellow earth lovers and caretakers. How wonderful it is to be in a bunch of us. And especially this time of year when you just feel everything growing and starting a new season. How can anybody say this isn't nature, this isn't valuable, that this isn't the thing to do. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about how I got involved with nature in many different ways, and then I'd like to read something from Chief Seattle, which I have never read anything that he has written that I didn't love. And so when I was about 5 years old, I was out, we lived next to an arboretum, which was a bunch of trees and a lake in Wisconsin. And I had seen that a mother raccoon had been killed, had been run over. And then I found 2 babies. And so I thought, I can't leave those babies here. There's nobody to take care of them anymore. And so I took them home, and my mother saw them and said, take them back. And like a child of 5 years old, I hid them and fed them and took care of them and petted them. And one day I got my lesson about how you don't want to do that with wild critters. I still have the scar. One of them bit me. I got blood poisoning. It was up to here when my mother finally took me to the doctor, and they took care of it. And then when I was about 8 years old, maybe 9, and I was in a biology class, and we were going to dissect frogs. And I told the teacher, I said, I'm not dissecting the frog. And she said, you will, or I'll give you an F in this class. And so I said, that's fine, I'm not going to. The only F I ever got. But there was such a love between me and the animals that I was surrounded with that it just kept growing. And then when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my parents took me up to this place in northern Wisconsin, and there was a Indian tribe there that was having a powwow. And so they went and did their thing that they were going to do, and I walked about 1.5 miles to and fro for 4 days. And finally they took notice of me, and the mother came, a little girl came and took me to her mother, and she said, why are you always here? You're always alone? Where are your parents? Are you eating? And so she gave me something to eat. And she said, why are you here? And I said, I love Indians. Well, the bottom line is that Papa came home, who happened to be the chief, and he interrogated me, scared the daylights out of me, big guy. And he said, you really want to be an Indian? And I said, I really wish with everything I am, I could be an Indian. And so they had a little ceremony for me. And they made me an honorary member of their tribe. And this, I can't say the Indian phrase that they used, but they defined it as, you are a wandering child. And that certainly has been true. And so all of these things have just been coming up. I think I planted my first pansy seeds when I was like 4 years old, and when they started growing, I was so excited I could hardly stand it. And raised my kids in that environment too. So that's a little bit about why loving and caring for the earth is so important to me. And so let me get on with what I actually picked to say. And this is a oration in 1854 of Chief Seattle's. I would have loved to have been able to read the whole thing to you, but it was like 10 pages of that. And so I was told 4 minutes. And so what he went on to say, and this was regarding a treaty, yonder sky that has wept tears of compassion upon my people for centuries untold, and which to us appears changeless and eternal, may change. Today is fair, tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds, My words are like the stars that never change. Whatever Seattle says, the great chief at Washington can rely upon with as much certainty as he can upon the return of the sun or the seasons. So saith Chief Seattle. The white chief says that big chief at Washington sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. This is kind of him, for we know he has little need of our friendship in return. His people are many. They are like the grass that covers vast prairies. My people are few. They resemble the scattering trees of a storm-swept land. The great and I presume good white chief sends us words that he wishes to buy our land, but is willing to allow us to live on it comfortably. This indeed appears just, even generous, for the red man no longer has rights that he need respect, and the offer may be wise also, as we are no longer in need of an extensive country. There was a time when our people covered the land as the waves of a wind-ruffled sea cover in shell-paved floors, but that time long since passed away with the greatness of tribes that are now but a mournful memory. I will not dwell on nor moan over our untimely decay, nor reproach my pale-faced brothers with hastening it, as we too may have been somewhat to blame. Thank you for this opportunity.
And there's plenty of cake in the back, and it's green, so it's a vegetable serving today. Go get it.
Buttons. Who's got the buttons? All right. For the sake of brevity, I think what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about what kind of led me to my dissertation. I can remember back in, I don't know how long ago, it was, I guess, the early 50s. I went out with my parents out west, driving in an old 1949 Buick Roadster. And we went through some times and got caught in a sandstorm. But driving through the West was so different from where I grew up, which was in Ohio, that I really wanted to get out of the car and just kind of roll around in the dirt, because it just seemed so different and inviting. Well, my parents wouldn't exactly let me do that. But what they did do was they let me get a tumbleweed. Now, I brought it into the back seat of that big, comfortable car, and for a long time just stared at it. Because I don't know if you've looked closely at a tumbleweed lately, but they're full of insects. And they're all kinds and different colors. And they crawl on all the branches of the tumbleweed. So it's like a very different world, looking deeply into a tumbleweed. Well, I think what that led to is my dissertation. Because what I chose to study is also very small and out of sight. I chose to study the many different kinds of animals that live between the grains of sand in streams. And they're all kinds. They're really fantastic shapes. And so these are called the myofauna, which means the very small animals. And more than just curiosity, I learned something from them. That they play a really big role in our streams. Because the streams get fed in these mountains from the leaves that fall down in the autumn. And those leaves are then broken down by various insects. But what happens is that they get coated with peanut butter. And the peanut butter they get coated with is actually fungi. And these little teeny animals that can live between grains of sand will eat that fungi. And that fungi and bacteria soup on the cracker of the leaf will really, as a result of that, grow very, very fast. And as they grow very, very fast, they enrich the leaves and break down the leaves quickly so the food can pass along the food chain. So that's just the story of how I got interested.
Next up will be Abram Friedman, who's our photographer back here, our videographer.
I was just going to say, I was at that first Earth Day celebration also that Roy mentioned, and I think I remember Roy at that on Union Square. Roy, you remember that? You were the guy with long blonde hair.
The hippie?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to start out by, I'm going to give everybody a little bit of homework. There are 3 pieces of legislation that are pending right now in the North Carolina General Assembly that will help North Carolina in its transformation to solar energy and energy efficiency. And so everybody's got a pen, write this down. House Bill 377 and Senate Bill 483, called the Efficient and Affordable Energy Rates Bill. This bill will create an inverted tiered block rate structure in North Carolina, utility rate structure, so that when you use more energy, it'll cost you more per kilowatt hour, and use less energy, it'll cost you less per kilowatt hour. So it creates a very powerful economic incentive for people, businesses, and industries to invest in energy efficiency and solar energy. Then the second bill is House Bill 245. It's called the Energy Freedom Act. And what this bill would do would allow third-party sales of electricity in North Carolina. You may not be aware of it, but right now it's illegal for anybody to sell energy except for Duke Energy in North Carolina. They have a regulated monopoly, and what that does is it prevents solar contractors from coming in and offering financing for certain types of financing for solar energy. If this bill passes, we'll be able to use the type of financing that eliminates upfront costs for electricity, for installing solar panels on your house, and it'll be a tremendous boon for solar energy. So it's very important that that bill pass, House Bill 245. And then the third bill, at the end of 2015, the solar tax credit is going to expire in North Carolina. It's the largest solar tax credit in the country. It's 35% that you can get back when you install a solar energy system in your house. Well, it's going to expire at the end of this year, unless they extend it. And the piece of legislation that's pending right now, I'm sorry, I don't remember the number of it, but it's in both the House and the Senate, would extend that to 2021. Extremely important piece of legislation. So call and write Joe Sam Queen, call and write Jim Davis. And Jim Davis is one of the sponsors of the bill to extend the solar tax credit. So there are some Republicans on board with this, and Democrats, a bipartisan bill. But they need to get it out of committee, and it has to happen quickly because there are some important deadline dates coming up in the state legislature. So everybody should remember that on this Earth Day to contact your legislators about that.
Can you
Pardon?
send it by email?
Email, phone.
No, I mean, I'm talking about you send it on bills.
Is it on the Canary Coalition site? These bills, can we go look up, decide what you...
It probably is on the Canary Coalition site, I'm not sure, but you can certainly find it if you go to the North Carolina General Assembly. Or you can call me later and I'll give you the number, or email me later and I'll give you the numbers.
Give it to Lorna, maybe she can send it to the
Yeah,
Democrats anyway.
okay, that's good.
How about House Bill 586? That's the bill to disallow forced schooling.
Oh, you're talking about the fracking issue.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to talk about
Yes.
You don't say the nasty word.
That's an important bill too. Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry, I didn't have time to think about what I was going to read today. So I just sort of at random picked through some of the things that Penny gave us. One of the books there, a Henry David Thoreau excerpt from Walden, thinking, any excerpt from Walden, it's kind of like the Bible or the I Ching, you pick something at random and it's got to have words of wisdom in it. So I couldn't go wrong, I figured, so that's what I'm going to read. Why should we live with such hurry and waste of life? We are determined to be starved before we are hungry. Men say that a stitch in time saves 9, and so they take 1,000 stitches today to save 9 tomorrow. As for work, we haven't any of any consequence. We have the St. Vitus dance and cannot possibly keep our heads still. If I should only give a few pulls at the parish bell rope, as for a fire, that is, without setting the bell, there is hardly a man on his farm in the outskirts of Concord, notwithstanding that press of engagements, which was his excuse so many times this morning, nor a boy, nor a woman, I might almost say, but would forsake all and follow that sound, not mainly to save property from the flames, but if we will confess the truth, much more to see it burn, since burn it must, and we, be it known, did not set it on fire, or to see it pull out and have a hand in it, if that is done as handsomely. Yes, even if it were the parish church itself, hardly a man takes a half-hour's nap after dinner, but when he wakes, he holds up his head and asks, "What's the news?" as if the rest of mankind had stood his sentinels. Some give directions to be waked every half hour, doubtless for no other purpose, and then to pay for it, they tell what they have dreamed. After a night's sleep, the news is as indispensable as the breakfast. Pray tell me anything new that has happened to a man anywhere on this globe. And he reads it over his coffee and rolls that a man has had his eyes gouged out this morning on the Wichita River, never dreaming the while that he lives in the dark, unfathomed mammoth cave of this world and has but the rudiment of an eye himself.
Next up, we're going to have Barbara Bell, Roger Turner, and then Mr. and Mrs. Bridgers will present. And then we'll get into our 4 o'clock schedule.
I'm Barbara Bell, and I'm a former, or current and former educator. I wanted to say something about Julia and the farm. I'm a transplant from Iowa and Missouri, and I lived on a farm as a child growing up, and the chores were at that time horrendous to me. I just thought it was terrible. I was out mucking out things before I went to school every morning, but I think now I look at my own son and my grandson and I think how I wish they had had the responsibility of taking care of the plants, the animals, all the pieces that went around like that. So I am just going to read some quotes that I found about the environment. Some of them are funny and some of them are not so funny. So, the sun, the moon, and the stars would have disappeared long ago had they happened to be within the reach of predatory human hands. By Havelock Ellis. There is a sufficiency in the world for man's need, but not for man's greed. Mahatma Gandhi. There's so much pollution in the air now that if it weren't for our lungs, there'd be no place to put it all. Robert Orban. Modern technology owes ecology an apology. By Alan Edison. Don't blow it, good planets are hard to find. A quote from the Time magazine. Nature provides a free lunch, but only if we control our appetites. William Ruckle something or other. I think the environment should be put in the category of our national security. Defense of our resources is just as important as defense abroad. Otherwise, what is there to defend? Robert Redford. We never know the worth of water till the well is dry. Thomas Fuller. We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. Aldo Leopold. Here is your country. Cherish these national wonders. Cherish these natural resources. Cherish the history and the romance as a sacred heritage for your children and your children's children. Do not let selfish men or greedy interests skin your country of its beauty, its riches, or its romance. Theodore Roosevelt. A nation that destroys its soils destroys itself. Forests are the lungs of our land, purifying the air and giving fresh strength to our people. Franklin Roosevelt. You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide which kind of difference you want to make. Jane Goodall. The environment is where we all meet, where we have mutual interest. It is the one thing all of us share. Lady Bird Johnson. Keep close to nature's heart and break clear away once in a while and climb a mountain or spend a week in the woods. Wash your spirit clean. John Muir. A true conservationist is a man who knows that the world is not given by his fathers, but borrowed from his children. John James Audubon. Live in each season as it passes, breathe the air, drink the drink, taste the fruit, and resign yourself to the influence of each. Henry David Thoreau. In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks. John Muir. That's probably my favorite one of all. The good man is the friend of all living things. Mahatma Gandhi. An understanding of the natural world and what it is in us, of the natural world and what's in it is a source of not only great curiosity, but great fulfillment. David Attenborough. It seems to me that the natural world is the greatest source of excitement, the greatest source of visual beauty, the greatest source of intellectual interest. It is the greatest source of so much in life that makes life worth living. David Attenborough. So bleak is the picture that the bulldozer and not the atomic bomb may turn out to be the most destructive invention of the 20th century. Philip Skavkoff. When we heal the earth, we heal ourselves. David Orr. Take care of the earth. She will take care, and she will take care of you. And the last two are the good ones to end on. Humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. Chief Seattle. And the last one, Earth Day, or every day is Earth Day.
Dr. Turner?
I'd like to thank, before I start this, I want to thank Senator Gaylord Nelson, who I believe started this Earth Day back in 1972. This is a senator from the state of Wisconsin. Today I'm going to bring you a song for the Horse Nation, horses in Native American cultures. And this is a poem by Linda Hogan from the Chickasaw Nation. And I want you to envision over 100 years ago what the tall grass prairies looked like. They were so tall that you would have to stand on the backs of horses to see over the tops of this grass. At that time, it covered 170 million acres of North America, and today less than 4% is left, mainly in Kansas. This poem is about walking in the grass with mystery, with beauty, and fierce powers. And the fierce power is the power of the horse. Affinity Mustang, Tonight, after the sounds of day have given way, she stands beneath the moon, a gray rock shining. She matches the land, belonging. She has a dark, calm face. Her hooves, like black stone, belong to the earth, the way it used to be, long grasses as grass followed rain, or wind laid down the plains of fall, or in winter now when her fur changes and becomes snow, or her belly hair turns the color of red water willows at the creek, her legs black as trees. These horses, almost a shadow, broken. When we walk together in the tall grasses, I feel her as if I am walking with mystery, with beauty and fierce powers, as if for a while we are the same animal and remember each other from before. Or sometimes I sit on earth and watch the wind blow her mare and tail, and the waves of dry grasses all one way, and it calls to mind how I've come such a long way through time to find her. Some days I sing to her, recalling the Kiowa man who sang to cover the screams of their ponies killed by the Americans, the songs I know in my sleep. Some nights, hearing her outside, I think that she is to earth what I am to her, belonging. But last night, it was her infant that died after the kinship and movement of so many months. Tonight, I sat on the straw and watch as the milk streams from her nipples to the ground. I clean her face. I've come such a long way through time to find her, and it is the first time I've ever seen a horse cry. Sing then, the wind says, sing.
Every program has to have commercial advertising. Mr. and Mrs. Monsignor, next, please. No, I'm sorry, Bridgers. Go ahead, whoever. Pick and choose.
This must be the first time I've ever been allowed to be first in our family.
I just changed my plan. Just get the mic closer to your mouth, okay? It wasn't close enough.
That should be good, I think.
Okay, I think it'll be good. Always be good to your mother. Robert Musil is the professor of global environmental politics at American University. He points out that if Jesus was serious when he said, "Just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me," Matthew 25:40, then we should take seriously that more than 5 million poor children die each year from diseases related to the environment. Asthma, dysentery, cholera, and malaria are all exacerbated by pollution, poverty, war, and the disruption of our global climate. In many instances, rising temperatures lead to the spread of disease-carrying mosquitoes. Drinking water fouled by floods or hurricanes can bear bacteria that in the belly of a poor, malnourished baby means not merely diarrhea, but death. He says, the biblical texts we need for this journey are not only those about the goodness of God's creation, the lilies of the field, the coming of rain in the desert. The essential texts describe Jesus' ministry, his call to heal, to bring hope to suffering humanity, to do justice, to bring peace to those, especially the most vulnerable who are in danger. According to Musil, the environment is not simply some lovely green thing outside of us or apart from us. It is in us as well. Every molecule passes through us, through the ecosystems that we are part of and that sustain us. modern medicine has confirmed the biblical claim that we are equal in the eyes of God, regardless of borders. From studies by Philip Grandjean, we know that a single molecule of mercury or PCBs released into the environment can make its way through evaporation, rain, and the food chain from a broken electric generator in Texas all the way to the Arctic. There, a pregnant Inuit is eating what appears to be a perfectly healthy fish. The mercury enters her bloodstream, crosses her placenta, and harms the learning and development of her unborn child. Musil says, if we are to halt this threat to creation, we need to include coal miners, children with asthma, people who live near or work in the factories that make most of us comfortable while spewing pollution and promoting cancer. We must care and act on the injustices of poverty and war. As Christians, we care about all creation. Many Christians are finally beginning to understand the interconnectedness of all creation from a religious perspective, the sense of oneness with God, with each other, and with creation. Matthew Fox even suggests Mother Earth as a metaphor for the crucified and resurrected Jesus, innocent of any crime. She has blessed us for billions of years and is now being killed by pollution. Even so, she rises daily to redeem us, holding out hope for a radical change in the human heart and spirit.
You think it's okay? Well, I was going to do something entirely different than what I'm going to do, but when I found out what Ben was going to read, I decided to follow in the same vein. It just so happened that this week when Sojourner magazine came, there was the perfect article, which I had to revise to fit into 4 minutes, but here goes. The name of it is Despair is Optional. As Pope Francis prepares to release his encyclical on climate change, it's worth remembering how far the conversation on religion and the environment has come in the past quarter century. When Bill McKibben wrote The End of Nature in the late 80s, there was very little religious environmentalism. Liberal churches believed that ecology was a subject to be addressed once we'd finished with war and poverty. Conservative churches viewed ecology as a way station on the road to paganism. But even then, there were a few wayfarers on the ecology path. Thomas Berry was one of them, as was Mary Tucker and John Grimm, who worked hard to gather theologians from around the world to search every tradition for the roots of ecological thinking. Episcopal Power and Light, now Interfaith Power and Light, was an early and successful effort at congregational action, as was Guardians of the Earth, a similar effort in the Jewish community. More senior members began to join. Patriarch Bartholomew, leader of 400 million Eastern Christians, became known as the Green Patriarch for his straightforward reckoning that environmental desecration was a sin. Desmond Tutu called climate change the human rights challenge of our time. And now the Pope. It is humanity who has slapped nature in the face, Francis said. We have, in a sense, taken over nature. Of course, there has been and continues to be pushback from conservatives and from corporations, but faith-based momentum is clear. People of faith understand that there are enemies in this fight, that companies like those who melted the Arctic and then moved to drill for more oil in its open waters are radically irresponsible. As a result, many denominations and universities are divesting their interest in such companies. Now the environmental movement unites the young, who will have to live for decades with the changed planet, and the old, who will have to go to their graves knowing that we've left a damaged planet behind. It reaches across ideology, for today the question of whether or how we evolved is less pressing than the fact that we are now playing out Genesis in reverse. There's a streak of sadness running through our faith-based movement. Clearly, we have failed to exercise dominion in a responsible way. But there's also a streak of joy. Unlike secular environmentalists, we're entitled, if we work as hard as we can, to imagine that some force will meet us halfway. And so despair is optional. Thanks be to God.
Okay, next up will be Donna Dupree, and have a short skit, I believe. Ms. Dupree.
Can I interject if she's going to mention something?
To me or to the audience? Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I just want to make you aware, and you probably already noticed, the pictures that are lining up on the back of it, pavilion, were done by students from Jamaica. I told my teachers that give me 2 more points on your score if you'll get your students to do something for our Earth Day celebration. They said that of interest to me is the fact that these students not only exchange their certification and what they put on their courses and courses from kindergarten on up, but at the same time, they seem to be in the midst of a lot of difficulty with living in Jamaica because of poverty and certain uncertainties in the environment. They still have the same concern that we have.
Hello. I don't really know if I need this. I'm pretty loud in general, but I'll slide it up here. So I was going to be speaking with Donna. You're fine. Cool. I was going to be participating with her, so I'm not quite sure why she's here, but I know she's caretaking for her daughter, so that may be it. My name is Kurt Collins. I know some of you guys, but not a lot of you guys, but pleased to see all of y'all, regardless of whether I know you or not. I guess I can say a little something about myself, maybe, since that seems to be the way it's going. So I teach a program called Wise Guys. So I teach all the 7th grade males in Jackson County, and the topics range from self-esteem to contraceptives, to communicating well, to knowing your personal values and accepting the personal values of others. And it's actually amazing. It kind of fell in my lap, but I feel like I have an opportunity to teach things that kids are not really getting. And I'm always questioning them as to whether or not they're getting it anywhere else. And most of the time they say they're not. Occasionally, thankfully, they are from their families, but culture at large is not teaching a lot of positive things, unfortunately. So I don't really know how to connect that necessarily to the Earth Day, but hopefully I'm helping the future generations become more capable of standing up for the things they believe in and comfortable with that. It's not a particular lesson, not that I don't step out of that decently. I do. I talk to them about it's our environment. It's not a separate thing. One of the things that's kind of interesting that I didn't know before this job, but kids are having a hard time nationally, and I've seen it locally, but we've talked about it, so it's national, when they're filling out the demographics, and they're like, what am I ethnically? Because I was born here, so aren't I Native American? I think that's fantastic, personally. No offense meant to anyone who has that heritage, of course. I'm also reading a book called 1491. Has anyone ever heard of this book? Fantastic book. It's just blowing my mind about all of the information pre-white people in the Americas, and some of the documents that it sourced are written by the first natives that were able to learn English and then write about it, and then also some of the Jesuits and things that came over initially. And the natives are amazed that we snot into a rag and carry it around with us. They found that so gross. I thought that was very interesting. They're like, we spit this on the ground and cast it off, and you guys carry it around. What's wrong with y'all? I just thought that's interesting. And I remember one of the Jesuits said that they were the prettiest people he'd ever encountered. In all of his global travels, he never encountered people that seemed to be as healthy as the Native Americans. I think that's very telling of how they lived. I kind of actually consider them to have been a pinnacle society. They seem to be sustainable, very low violence. It's impressive. So Donna had asked me to read something called The Ocean, and you can find it online. Harrison Ford did it originally, and she was going to be Mother Nature, who I think is Julia Roberts, if you source that online. I, of course, cannot deliver it as well as Harrison Ford, but... So The Ocean. I am water. I am most of this planet. I shaped it. Every stream, every cloud, and every raindrop, it all comes back to me. One way or another, every living thing here needs me. I'm the source. I'm what they crawled out of. Humans are no different. I don't owe them a single thing. I give, they take, but I can always take back. That's just the way it's always been. It's not their planet anyways. Never was, never will be. But humans take more than their share. They poison me and then expect me to feed them. Well, it doesn't work that way. If humans want to exist in nature with me and off of me, I suggest they listen close. I'm only going to say this once. If nature isn't kept healthy, humans won't survive. Simple as that. Me, I could give a damn. With or without humans, I'm still the ocean. I covered this entire planet once, and I can always cover it again. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next up will be Mr. Charles Easton. There he comes.
As I've gotten older, standing up is an accomplishment. A couple of weeks ago, I was at the Come to the Table conference at SEC on food insecurity. And one of the speakers at the beginning of the day read this poem that I'm going to read. And it's by Mary Oliver, who Jean Ellen was reading earlier. And I was praying that she didn't read my poem, but I decided if she did, I was going to read it again. I don't know if you know that who Mary Oliver is. I didn't know. She's a Pulitzer Prize winning poet, and she writes about nature and the human condition and how this has informed her life through the years. I also learned when I was trying to find this poem that I didn't know a lot about poetry. I used to think that poems rhymed. I used to think that they had punctuation, and I used to think that stanzas meant something. But I have since learned they don't. So here we go. When I Am Among the Trees by Mary Oliver. When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say that they save me daily. I am so distant from the hope of myself in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me, the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches. And they call again. "It's simple," they say. "And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine."
Thank you, Charles. Next up will be Jane Koenig, and followed by Mary Corsair.
Thank you. I remember the first Earth Day really well. In the spring of 1970, I was a college student, and we were preoccupied with protesting against Vietnam and secret incursions into Cambodia, planning and going to riots and avoiding drug busts, and honest, it was all happening at once. School curfews, and then school shutdowns, and finally 4 dead in Ohio. But on April 22nd, we planted a tree because it was Earth Day, and it was a start. So today, we're still celebrating Earth Day and the Earth. But what is the Earth? It's air, water, ground, organisms, and we're all interrelated. What are the organisms? Some of them fly in the air. What would we do without eagles and robins and bees? No bees, no food, no us. Some of them swim in the water, whales and dolphins and frogs and our salamanders. Some live under the ground or in it. Tigers, dogs, chipmunks, trees, and humans. And some we can't even see, like bacteria. Can't live with them, but we can't live without them. And what do they all have in common? Chemicals. It's another thing we can't live without, but sometimes we're finding it very hard to live with. Chemicals are the air, they are the water, the ground, and the organisms. And chemicals can also destroy the earth. It's our job, the organisms who think and plan and dream and design, to learn about and control the chemicals of destruction. But that's so hard. We need chemicals for all our stuff and to protect us from diseases and the bad guys out there. And chemicals make lots and lots of money, and we all know money makes the world go round. I'd sing, but I can't. And I wonder, though, have we reached the tipping point yet? You all know what the tipping point is. The point beyond which we've gone so far, we can't come back. And for a while, a long time, we were okay. The earth is strong, it's resilient. But have we reached a point where it's overwhelmed? Is it too late? When do we stop trading off tomorrow's existence for today's dollars? So what can you do? You can learn. Listen up. Learn the consequences of what you buy, what you use, what you throw away. Talk. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to scary people you don't know, just like I'm doing now, although I know about half of you by now. And let other people know how you feel and get them involved too. And finally, vote. Choose the people who support environmentally sound causes and actions. If you don't know a candidate's environmental platform, ask them, challenge them, and don't let up. Will the earth still be here when all the organisms are gone? Probably. But by then it'll be too late for you. Too late for your children, the dogs, the eagles, the salamanders. Let people know you're on the side of a clean environment and a good earth. It's the only one you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Next up is Mary Corsair, followed by Rachel Bridgers. Hi, Mary.
Well, my husband and I, like Barbara, are transplants from Iowa by way of Missouri. And I don't know if I will ever get tired of just the glory and the beauty of this place everywhere I go, everything I do. And so just to put a little plug out there, today we were out looking for my stepmother's dog that ran away. So if anyone hears of somebody finding a little Yorkie in the area of Greens Creek, but even just looking for little Joy, all of the wildflowers that are just scattered so beautifully in every nook and cranny is just a delight. So I'm going to be reading from a book by Barbara Kingsolver called Small Wonder, and it's a collection of essays about the earth. With all due respect for the wondrous ways people have invented to amuse themselves and one another on paved surfaces, I find that this exodus from the land makes me unspeakably sad. I think of the children who will never know intuitively that a flower is a plant's way of making love, or what silence sounds like, or that trees breathe out what we breathe in. I think of the astonished neighborhood children who huddled around my husband in his tiny backyard garden in the city where he lived years ago, clapping their hands to their mouths in pure dismay at seeing him pull carrots from the ground. Ever the thoughtful teacher, he explained about fruits and roots and asked, "What other foods do you think might grow in the ground?" They knit their brows, conferred, and offered brightly, "Spaghetti." I wonder what it will mean for people to forget that food, like rain, is not a product, but a process. I wonder how they will imagine the infinite when they have never seen how the stars fill a dark night sky. I wonder how I can explain why a wood thrush song makes my chest hurt to a populace for whom wood is a construction material and thrush is a tongue disease. What we lose in our great human exodus from the land is a rooted sense as deep and intangible as religious faith, of why we need to hold on to the wild and beautiful places that once surrounded us. We seem to succumb so easily to the prevailing human tendency to pave such places over, build subdivisions upon them, and then name them the Willows, or Peregrine's Roost, or Elk Meadows, after whatever it was that got killed there. Apparently, it's hard for us humans to doubt, even for a minute, that this program of plunking down our edifices at regular intervals over the entire landmass of planet Earth is overall a good idea. To attempt to slow or change the program is a tall order. Barry Lopez writes that if we hope to succeed in the endeavor of protecting natures other than our own, it will require that we reimagine our lives. It will require of many of us a humanity we've not yet mustered and a grace we were not aware we desired until we had tasted it. And yet no endeavor could be more crucial at this point. Protecting the land that once provided us with our genesis may turn out to be the only real story there is for us. The land still provides our genesis. However, we might like to forget that our food comes from dank, muddy earth, that the oxygen in our lungs was recently inside a leaf, and that every newspaper or book we may pick up, including this one, ultimately though recycled, is made from the hearts of trees that died for the sake of our imagined lives. What you hold in your hands right now beneath these words is consecrated air and time and sunlight. and first of all, a place. Whether we are leaving it or coming into it, it's here that matters. It is place. Whether we understand where we are or don't, that is the story. To be here or not to be. Storytelling is as old as our need to remember where the water is, where the best food grows, where we find our courage for the hunt. It's as persistent as our desire to teach our children how to live in this place that we have known longer than they have. Our greatest and smallest explanations for ourselves grow from place as surely as carrots grow in the dirt. I'm presuming to tell you something that I could not prove rationally, but instead feel as a religious faith. I can't believe otherwise. A world is looking over my shoulder as I write these words. My sensors are bobcats and mountains. I have a place from which to tell my stories. So do you, I expect. We sing the song of our home because we are animals, and an animal is no better or wiser or safer than its habitat and its food chain. Among the greatest of all gifts is to know our places. Oh, how can I say this? People need wild places. Whether or not we think we do, we do. We need to be able to taste grace and know once again that we desire it. We need to experience a landscape that is timeless, whose agenda moves at the pace of speciation and glaciers. To be surrounded by a singing, mating, howling commotion of other species, all of which love their lives as much as we do ours, and none of which could possibly care less about our economic status or our running day calendar. Wildness puts us in our place. It reminds us that our plans are small and somewhat absurd. It reminds us of why, in those cases in which our plans might influence many future generations, we ought to choose carefully. Looking out on a clean plank of planet Earth, we can get shaken right down to the bone by the bronze-eyed possibility of lives that are not our own.
Thank you, Mary. Next up will be Rachel Bridgers, followed by Miss Jane Hibbs. Thanks.
I don't see Rachel, so.
Rachel's not here. Jane, would you like to come on up? Then Rose Hooper Garrett after that. Thank you.
It's great to be with you today. I live in Haywood County, but one of my concerns I have is about the honeybee. That's our state insect, and we need to take care of it. I'm going to be reading to you today from the current issue of Smithsonian. It's an essay by Dave Goulson. It's called Field Study. When I first saw the field on a damp October day, it didn't look like much, 3,300 acres around a crumbling farmhouse in rural France, 50 miles south of the old Roman city of Poitiers. Previously a wheat field, it had been sown with grasses for grazing cattle. But I envisioned something spectacular and incredibly rare, a wild meadow seething, chirping, and hopping with insect life, and above all, a safe haven for the much beleaguered bumblebee. I've spent 20 years studying the bumblebees, those quintessential signs of summer and intellectual giants of the insect world. Sadly, their natural habitats are nearly gone, and some species in Europe, North America, even as far as Japan, are in rapid decline. Franklin's bumblebee, formerly found in Oregon and California, is almost certainly extinct. To a degree, the bumblebee crisis overlaps another bee problem you've heard about, colony collapse disorder, the devastating disappearance of adult commercial honeybees. Recent studies suggest that insecticides, known as neonicotinoids, play a role in that problem because they can disrupt navigation and make honeybees more susceptible to disease. It makes sense that wild bees, including bumblebees, are also harmed by these chemicals. But we know for a fact that the big driver of the bumblebee decline has been the conversion of flower-rich grasslands to flower-free farm monocultures. Fragments of natural habitat that remain are too often to support viable, are too small to support viable bee populations. Thus, the French farmland, which I have been slowly reviving, to wilderness. It's a true field study chronicled in A Buzz in the Meadow, out this month. It's not easy restoring floral diversity on formerly arable land that has been enriched with fertilizers. The high soil fertility favors coarse grasses that outcompete the flowers. So a local farmer cuts the hay and feeds it to his goats, which saps nutrients from the soil. As the grass weakens, flowers creep back, regenerating from the soil's seed bank, and from seeds blowing in on the wind are carried in by birds. Just last year, I recorded my field's 100th new flower species, excluding those that I have sown. Every new arrival, from red clover to lady's bedstraw, supports new insects. I have dozens of butterfly, dragonfly, cricket, beetle, and mantis species. From just a handful of bees, there are now 16 bumblebee species alone, including a rare short-haired bumblebee, plus honeybees and more than 50 other bee species. These bees spill out from the meadow to pollinate the sunflowers of my neighbor's garden field and fruits and vegetables in nearby gardens. Studies around the world confirm that crop yields are more reliable when there's a nearby patch of undisturbed habitat to act as a source of pollinators. It seems to me that if 10% of farmland, perhaps the least productive, were wild meadows instead, then we wouldn't have to worry about a lack of pollination. Though we often focus our conservation attention on large charismatic animals, our own survival is linked far more tightly to the fate of insects and their kin. We need hoverflies, lacewings, and lady beetles to eat pests, flies and dung beetles to recycle nutrients, worms and myriad other creatures to maintain our soils. And it's the bees that pollinate our crops, providing a global service worth more than $200 billion per year. I'm learning to look after the little creatures, to find more corners for them to thrive in, for it is they that make the world go around. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Our two last readers will be Newt Smith and Becky Mack, and then we'll have Rose. Rose, I'm sorry, I missed Rose. My bad. And we'll have we'll have some music afterwards if you'd like to stay to attend.
All right. Thank you, Jane, for your concern and your actions, too. Okay, folks, how many climate skeptics does it take to change a light bulb? None. It's too early. They don't even think it's time to do it yet. Up at City Lights, I found this great book. It's by Sir James Lovelock, and he's called the greatest scientific thinker of our time. It's called A Rough Ride to the Future, and in this book he says, like it or not, we are part of Mother Earth, and like the citizens of a great nation, we draw power from our membership. In common with all animals, we have breathed in oxygen from plants and used it to recycle as carbon dioxide the food the plants provided. Now, through our intelligence, we have allowed our planet to become aware of its environment in space, and not only to see its place in the cosmos, but also to grow aware of potential threats, such as that posed by an incoming planetesimal, one of the kind we believed to have ended the reign of the dinosaurs. Because we are alive, in a rudimentary way, the system has, through us, become sentient. Before this, life existed without knowing what it was, how old it was, or anything about its future. The animal-plant system is important through its capacity for energy transfer. Our role has been to start the process by which Mother Earth awakens from her long 4.5 billion years of infancy and becomes aware. We give the Earth a chance to become an intelligent planet, more capable of self-regulation and with potentially a longer, useful lifespan. The human species may be the start of a comparably important information transfer system, one that will powerfully and directly aid Mother Earth as she continues self-regulation. We are traveling along now on a path that could lead us to become the citizens of a live, intelligent planet, which might in turn become a citizen of the galaxy. With such a future ahead of us, how could we possibly be gloomy?
And I was one of the readers, along with quite a few other people at the time, and it's nice to read here, and so I'll read a poem or two. The first one is called The Present. It is never the same. Light comes softly over the trees, a hill, a locust limb, and a lone hawk are composed for an instant in an infinite focus. And in that moment, everything is perfect. Everything is there. The next poem I'm going to read is a poem called Middle Prong Wilderness, and it's one of my favorite hikes over here. After leaving the road and crossing the stream, the trail climbs steeply away from our cars. Soon we're in a dark spruce shadows. The ground is soft, the undergrowth sparse. The path climbs steadily, crossing seeps and creeks with scattered rocks for footholds. Talk slows, then stops, and we hear our breath, our steps, our heartbeats. The sky is hidden by fog and fir treetops, and sunlight scatters patches on the ground. Glistening from the light drizzle, the ferns drape the ground like a lacework covering the bodice of this wild place. Later, moss offers us its green plush, a soft embrace we might sink in, tempting us to touch the curls. Soon, the trail blazes disappear, and we are left to puzzle out our way as branches veer off and all trace is lost among thick weeds and brambles. By a small waterfall, we eat our lunch, looking at maps to be sure that this is the wilderness we saw. The rain comes, and the way becomes treacherous, a clamber over rocks and wet roots, making each step tenuous. By now, completely unsure, we press on, wondering if we will ever hear cars or planes or people again. Later, near dark, after finding our way home, we look out at the emptiness of our mown lawns and examine the safe, tidy order of our lives. Oh, to be wet and lost and alive again. And the last one I'll read is called Between Source and Falls. And it's a poem about being at a waterfall. Below us, we can hear the waterfall's roar rushing back upstream as if reaching back for something left behind. Maybe it's here where we sit on this small rock stool placed like an altar at the base of a delicate little cascade, watching the tiny rivulets tumble with white abandon over the small ledges into the spaces below and gathering clear pools before sliding over slick rocks down to whatever lies beyond. Somewhere above us, a spring breaks through the leaves, silent but sure, like a plowed trace on the ground. Above that is perhaps a wet weather seep, visible only after winter snows or long rains. And above all that, traces are buried, hidden from view. Where we sit is sacred enough. Above the roar and terrible descent, and below the mystery where sources are untraceable, here at this place is enough. This life between source and fall. Thank you.
Made into a movie, and you will never forget it, I promise you. But anyhow, before I read the poem, I'm going to do a little little philosophy thing here. We used to know many years ago where heaven was. It was up there. And we knew where God was, up there in heaven. But as our first moon orbit, doesn't land on the moon, but circled the moon, this appeared in Life magazine with a photograph of the Earth. And it's for the first man-moon orbit. So long as the void is hysterical, bolted out, you float on nothing but procedure alone. Eating, sleeping like a man deprived of the weight of his own and all humanity in the name of a new life. And through this, making new time slowly, the moon comes. Its mountains bulge, they crack, they hold together, closer, spreading, smashed crusts of uncanny rock, ash glowing, alchemicalizing the sun with a piece of a country bombed out by the universe. You lean back from the great light-shattered face, the pale blaze of Godstone coming, close, too close, and the dead seas turn, the craters hover, turn their dark side to kill the radio, and the one voice of Earth you and your computers have brought out, the silence of mountains, the animal eye has not seen since the Earth split. Since God first found geometry would move in mysterious ways, you hang mysteriously, pulling, the moon dark pulling, and solitude breaks down like an electrical system. It is something else. Nothing is something. Something I am trying to say. Oh God Almighty, to come back. And in the poem, there's this black space where they can't see anything, they can't hear anything. To come back, to complete the curve, to come back, singing with procedure, back through the last dark of the noon, past the dim ritual, random stones of oblivion, and through the blinding edge of moonlight into the sun. And behold, the blue planet steep in its dream of reality, its calculated vision shaking with the only love. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Monsinger would like about 2 minutes of your time, please.
Somebody left me off the list. I won't say who. I'm Jim. Those of you that were here last year know I am a comic strip fan. I actually read some from Calvin and Hobbes. Can't do that again because you probably know Calvin and Hobbes no longer exist. But I went online and found a site called Grinning Planet, which is a series of green tunes and comics about the environment. Because of the time, and I know for a fact we got some real good music coming up in just a few minutes, I'm just going to read a couple. If you want to come look at some of the ones I have, feel free. One is from a comic strip called The Other Coast. This is called How Pesticides Work. First picture, a man sprays a butterfly with the pesticide. A bird comes along, eats the butterfly. The bird dies and lands on the weed, killing the weed. So that is how pesticides work. The only other one I want to give, there's two bears. You can't see this, but they're looking at the head of a human over the fireplace. One of the bears says, I know there's a lot of controversy over whether we should be hunting them, but studies have shown that their numbers are quite sustainable. Stay around for the music. Thank you.
Dirt original.
Now we're going to cover some Harry Nilsson. It's called The Most Beautiful World in the World.
There you go.
Thoughts all about you, the most beautiful world in the world. till the end of the night. There might be a big bang or heavenly quiet. There might be a fire. No matter what happens, I bet it's okay. You're a scary place out there, world, but I couldn't be happy without you. And I swear all my thoughts are about you. The most beautiful world in the world. Your mountains when you're mad, your rivers when you're sad. I love you for your snow. I love the way you wear your tree. The most beautiful world in the world. And though there are times when I doubt you, I just couldn't go on without you. So when you get older, look over your shoulder and look back to see if it's real. Oh, tell her she's beautiful, roll the world over and give her a kiss and a feel. Thank you.
Are both you guys out of Western or?
No, Asheville.
Oh, really?
Yeah.